Great. Would you like?
Good morning. Today is September 7th, 2023. It's approximately 9:30 a.m. This is the matter of application Z0169-23 C. It's an application for a conditional use permit for a home occupation for event hosting. The applicant is Kevin Bainey. I will note also that Kevin Bainey is present, as is one of the co-owners of the property, Tammy Plummer. Present on behalf of Clackamas County is Melissa Lord. My name is Carl Cox. I'm a private attorney appointed as land use hearings officer for the county. I will conduct this hearing and make a couple of important statements for the record. First, this is a quasi-judicial land use hearing, which means two important things for those participating in this hearing. First, all of the criteria that can be used in reaching a decision have been identified in the staff report. Testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards the criteria identified in the staff report, or must be directed towards or other relevant criteria found in the comprehensive plan or other land use regulation that the person believes applies to the decision. Accordingly, please direct your testimony to a relevant approval criterion. Second, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Once final, this decision may be appealed to the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals. Next, I'll state that I've received no ex parte contact, meaning no one contacted me outside of these proceedings to try to persuade me concerning a fact or issue present at this hearing. I had an opportunity to receive and download and review the exhibits prepared by the county in advance of this hearing, including the county staff report and items like the original application, some supplemental documents, and some related exhibits, and a publicly posted or a publicly submitted letter in opposition and an amended letter of opposition by the same individual. I had an opportunity to review all of those items. Next, I've considered issues of bias and conflict of interest and have determined that I do not have any bias or conflict of interest in this matter. The county is making a record. That record is available through the county. At this time, I'll ask the county to provide an explanation concerning participation in this hearing via the Zoom platform.
Great, thank you. This public hearing will be conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officer, county staff, and the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will use your raise hand feature. For attendees on a PC and iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, either at the top or bottom of your screen, depending on your device. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a little while. Primarily, you will see all participants' cameras, not just the one who's speaking. Staff will call upon you when it's time for you to provide your testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you've provided your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. If the record is left open at the end of this hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, you can email your written testimony to myself at mlord@clackamas.us or mail it to Clackamas County's Planning and Zoning Division at 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City 97045. My contact email address is also available on the webpage where you found the link for today's Zoom hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer's written decision. If you do not wish to testify but would like to receive the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address. Again, my email is mlord@clackamas.us. You can email your contact information to me, or you can enter it into the Zoom chat function during the hearing.
Thank you. The order of proceedings will be that I will ask the county to begin the hearing with Ms. Lord presenting the staff report, and if she has a presentation, to present that as well. Then I will provide a similar opportunity for the applicant to present information that the applicant has. And I do have some questions about this application and the intentions of the applicant. I'd like to clarify a couple of things. Then there will be an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments. I may also provide a rebuttal opportunity by the county or the applicant as well. All right, any questions before we begin? No? Okay, Ms. Lord?
Yes, I did create a PowerPoint, so let me go ahead and share my screen. Now, if I drag this to my other screen, are you still seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Great. So today we're discussing a conditional use permit for land use application, file number Z0169-23. My name is Melissa Lord, and I'll speak today on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Division. The application is for a home occupation to host events such as weddings at 35598 South Farm Road. This property is located west of Highway 213, sandwiched between Monte Cristo Road to the north and Oster Road to the south. The property is about 40 acres in size, and maybe 2/3 or perhaps 3/4 of it is currently in farm use right now. The property zoning district is exclusive farm use, or EFU. The applicant is requesting to, again, operate a home occupation for event hosting. The events would include no more than 150 people per event, and about an average of 105 people per event. The events would take place on the lawn and in a proposed approximately 2,000 square foot building with 2 overhangs or patios on either side. The building would include 3 permanent bathrooms and a kitchen, and then a large open event space. The applicant's also proposing to have a gravel parking lot that would accommodate 40 vehicle parking spaces. This is just a snippet of the site plan that the applicant provided in their application materials. I've highlighted a couple things on the site plan, so I'll draw your attention to the red arrows. There's in and out traffic, so in traffic coming in on an existing driveway towards the southern part of the property. Well, still to the northern part of the property, but south of the first driveway, and then out traffic will come out at the north part of the property, back onto Farm Road. I've highlighted in yellow the parking area. This is the gravel parking lot that the applicant's proposing to have 40 parking stalls in. And then the orange colored building I've highlighted here, which is that proposed event building on site. The floor plan for the proposed building was submitted in the application materials as well. And so this building includes a kitchen towards the bottom end of our screen and 1 permanent bathroom, and then 2 other bathrooms towards the top, and then a bride's dressing room or a getting ready room, in the top corner. And most of the building itself is just a large open event space. And then they've got 2 covered patios on either side. A home occupation to host events in the exclusive farm use district is a conditional use, and it's subject to the conditional use standards of ZDO section 1203. It's also a type 3 land use application where the hearings officer has the decision authority. So that brings us here today. We've received one public comment in opposition, and it was amended further. So this was entered into the record as Exhibit 10 and 10A to provide some more clarification on their original point or expand their original point. Generally speaking, the issues that the member of the public had brought up were related to noise of the event, road degradation from the traffic coming to and from the event, and then having concerns about not being able to farm their land while trying to be a good neighbor while the applicant's hosting events. And we can certainly talk more about that if you'd like, but that's the general idea of the comment that we received. In my staff report, I listed a number of the review criteria that I found were being met, but I also highlighted a few key issues that I think are worth discussing a bit more today. So my presentation I have for you is just focused around the key issues, these 5 issues that I've identified, rather than talking about all the other parts of the application that I found did meet the standards, did meet the criteria. So I'll go into, pardon?
These are my questions as well.
Oh, perfect. So
No,
I'll touch briefly on each of these and happy to answer any more questions that you have as we get through it.
Okay.
So first we can talk about parking. The section 1015 of the ZDO requires that 1 vehicle parking space is provided for every 3 guests that would attend the event. Now the applicant's asking for 150 guests to attend the event and to have up to 5 employees on site. The ZDO also requires 1 parking space be provided for every employee. So that would mean we need actually 55 parking spaces rather than the 40 parking spaces that are proposed. Based on the level of detail provided on the site plan, it's difficult to determine whether there's adequate space for these additional 15 parking spaces that our code requires. And based on aerial photographs and just the size of the property, it seems likely, but staff had recommended that if the application gets approved, conditions of approval be imposed to require an updated and detailed site plan to be submitted, clearly showing all 55 parking spaces, meeting the parking space dimensional standards and the site circulation traffic aisle width standards as well.
Okay, and let's pause for just a minute.
Certainly.
And I'm going to direct this to the applicant and Ms. Plummer. Do you understand what Ms. Lord is stating here about the parking?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you need 1 space per 3 guests, then you can address this in really one of 2 ways. You can limit your guest list to 3 times 40 minus your 5 for your employees, or you can increase the size of your parking lot to accommodate 55 spaces. I don't know, and neither did Ms. Lord, whether you have enough room to do that, but do you?
Can we answer that?
Yes.
Yeah, that it can be expanded all the way north along that driveway. So there's plenty.
And so the county is proposing a condition of approval that you actually amend your application to increase it to 55 spaces. I believe I saw that, Ms. Lord. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And you're in agreement with that as the applicant?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let's move on.
Great, thank you. Next up is the standard that says the home occupation needs to be operated substantially either in the dwelling or in buildings normally associated with uses in the zoning district. Now, the applicants made it clear the events won't happen in their dwelling, which is very okay. So next we look at whether the events are happening substantially in the building. There was information or limited information provided in the application narrative that talked about using the lawn space, but didn't really talk about how much of the event is taking place outside, how much of the event is taking place inside, in order for us to really determine with confidence that the events are substantially within a building. So that was one unresolved question. Now, the applicant did provide an updated narrative that speaks a little bit to this last night. So that's been entered into the record as Exhibit 11, but I'll let them speak to what their plans are either now or when it's their time to give their presentation. But that's the second issue that I've identified with the application materials.
I think it makes sense to follow the previous format and address this right now. And I have a couple of comments about this. Okay, so the requirement here is for the events to be substantially either in the operator's dwelling or to take place in buildings normally associated with uses permitted in the applicable zoning district. Okay, so I just read the standard. Here we're looking at exclusive farm use, so the types of buildings that are normally associated with that, obviously a dwelling that's specifically listed. And so people who have property in the exclusive farm use EFU zone that have a dwelling cannot use their home. Next, we're looking to other types of buildings normally associated with EFU uses. So barns are the poster child for that, a barn, or some people keep workshops or sheds like that, or here you're proposing a building that will be used as for a canning operation, and that to me is fine as well. It's a use that you might find in an exclusive farm use area. You're going to take care of produce, prepare it for your farm stand, can some of it, same thing. It all makes sense to me. What I do have a question about, though, is the bathrooms. So barns can have a bathroom. Yep, let's go ahead and look at that. Barns can have a bathroom, often do. I'm familiar with that. And same with workshops and storage buildings. People put pole barns up all the time, and sometimes they will have an area in it that they use for a workshop within the pole barn, and they'll put a bathroom in there. What I'm not familiar with, and I'm just directly asking, are these types of accessory structures having a bathroom with an exit door to the outside. In my experience, and you may be able to point me at something different, but in my experience, people that put a barn on their property don't put up an outside door for a men's room, a women's room. Those are the type of structures that I find when I go to a public park or I go to a campground or something like that. When I go to a exclusive farm use property and I see a house, I understand that there are probably bathrooms inside the house. Same with a guest house. They might have a guest house on their property, but I'm not familiar with one that has doors that lead directly to the outside. I don't walk up to someone's house and see a bathroom door. I have to go inside, and same with their barn. I expect that if there's a bathroom in there, I have to go inside the barn to find it. Same with their, maybe they've got a workshop or of some kind that they use, or a storage building. Again, I don't expect to see a men's room and a women's room. Instead, in my experience, when there are bathrooms on EFU property, there are porta potties or Santa cans that are set outside for people to use that are, working at the outside on the property. So what I'm going to ask is, do you have some type of evidence to support that I can make a finding here that a building that is some type of accessory structure would be found in the exclusive farm use zone that has bathrooms that exit directly to the outside? So I'm not familiar with any, but I am familiar with ones that have bathrooms on the inside. So I would certainly approve plans for a structure like this that I find is reasonably associated with uses in this zone, for produce preparation and canning. That makes sense to me. In a kitchen, and particularly a structure that had a kitchen within it, I would expect it to have at least one bathroom. So at least one or two bathrooms even makes sense to me, that would be in your zone, but not a bathroom that exits directly to the outside. And Ms. Lord, you're welcome to steer me towards something as well. I am just saying that this isn't my experience. So I'm opening this up. Do you understand what I'm asking about?
Sure.
So the reason we did one to the outside, they could all be inside, it doesn't matter, but during the ceremony, then people would not have to go into the building to use the bathroom. And that's really and that is another statement. So the berry farm that's here, they bring a porta potty in, but we could also have this open for their farm workers, you know, during harvest time here. So we could easily be moved to the inside. Do you have another comment?
Yeah, yeah, it easily could be on the inside. We put it on the outside thinking because of other places we've been, farm stands, TLC Creamery for one. It's funny because I've always seen the bathroom on the outside. When you're there for an event, you have to go out and around. And so I just thought that was something we had to do. So we did it this way. The doors can easily be moved. And those doors face away from anything that anybody on the street would know there was a bathroom there, if that makes sense.
Let's talk about, you just referenced a farm stand having bathrooms on the outside.
Yeah.
Well,
A couple of them I've been
it's
to.
actually a creamery, so they make cheese. It's a dairy farm.
What's the name of it again?
TLC?
TM.
TMK, sorry.
Yeah.
TMK Creamery.
TLK?
TMK.
Okay, TMK Creamery Farm Stand.
Yeah, TMK.
Creamery.
TMK Creamery.
Okay, bathrooms to the outside, like a men's and women's labeled bathroom?
I don't remember if there were two. I just remember because I did a paint event there and had to go outside under
Okay.
the cover for where the bathroom entry was.
And you had another example?
Yeah, there's a farm stand. I think it was in Sherwood. On 99W, I believe. I couldn't tell you what it was. I just remember a couple times seeing that and thinking, oh, maybe for this you have to have a bathroom entrance outside. So we did that thinking that, because we haven't gotten to this process yet to know what we have to do. But again, like Kevin said, there's plenty of room there if we need to put the door to the inside. It's actually outside, but it's completely undercover because that patio goes out in the big area.
I saw that drawing. I thought it was perfect, but I thought to me, it looked like an actual event center rather than a farm use structure.
Right.
It's a distinction I'm making, something that is always an event center, not actually something I would find there, but I might find it at, on some commercial property somewhere. Does the county have a comment about farm stands and bathrooms to the outside?
I personally haven't reviewed farm stands enough to know about bathrooms to the outside. My hesitation with the creamery example is that I am not, how do I say this? I'm not confident if everything that's on the property received all of the permits necessary to be there. And so that's my only hesitation using that as an example.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe not an approved building.
But nonetheless, still an example of what is currently out there and functioning. So
yeah, that is an issue for me. I don't want to approve a building based on an unapproved building's existence. That's true. That would not be right. What we will discuss before the and close of the hearing as an opportunity to request that the record stay open. And if, we can deal with this right now in one of two ways. First, I can put a condition of approval that no bathrooms to the outside. Or secondly, like I just suggested, we can keep the record open and you can submit evidence of legal dwellings in the EFU zone that have bathrooms that go directly to the outside. You can consider that through the rest of the hearing, or you can make a decision now. You did state that you're willing to put the bathroom doors to the inside, and I don't have an issue with it then.
You good with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just move it. Then we don't have to go look for something and find another building that's not approved. Because it sounds like that might be how that happened.
Didn't intend that.
Yeah, and again, if you have 150 guests, having one bathroom on the outside isn't going to take care of it. You're going to be doing some porta potties anyway. The next thing I had about the bathrooms is the number of bathrooms. It's not very clear. It states 2 bathrooms in some areas, 3 bathrooms in others. How many is it that you're actually looking to provide?
There's three.
3. So 1 inside a separate room, which you've sort of designated the bride's room, correct?
Yeah, and we did that because of the outside bathrooms, but if the entrance is inside, and we could just make that 2 bathrooms, if that makes sense. We did the other one, so there definitely was an inside entrance for the kitchen and all that. Does that make sense? But if we could do it with 2, if we need to just put 2 bathrooms in there.
I'm more familiar with buildings with 2 bathrooms or 1 bathroom, and I think I would look at 2 bathrooms.
Okay.
Okay.
Because that's my room.
2. Okay.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, is it really a facility that is intended for use for canning and vegetables with, that's a lot of bathrooms for a cannery and a kitchen. But I could understand why you might, especially with employees coming and going, you might want to provide both a men's and a women's bathroom. Okay, or 2 separate bathrooms so that there's enough for everybody. Let's move on. The next, Ms. Lord, and thank you for your patience, Ms. Lord. I think it makes sense to address these as they come up.
I think so too. Maybe before we move on, we could talk about the events happening substantially in a building versus outside. That's one of the other questions. It relates sort of to, there's 2 points that relate to being inside or outside. This noise, the section 80602J talks about noise and limiting your noise to the property line during certain hours. And I think that this is more of a question mark than a concern, but it relies heavily on the point previously of talking about how much of the events are taking place inside versus outside. So for me, that's something that still remains unanswered at this point.
Sure. On the lawn and in a temporary tent. The issue here, to me, doesn't involve so much the visual impacts to surrounding neighbors as there's no home across the road from here, and there's a stand of trees, and it's, I think, 900 feet to the closest other dwelling on an adjacent property. So the visual impact isn't that strong. There will be a graveled entrance road and exit road with a partially paved area, but that doesn't I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and if I may,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, if I may. So there was one point in the applicant's narrative that said, before we build the building, we're going to operate in tents and on the lawn. And so that was sort of a secondary part to this statement, is staff's recommending that we don't allow that, just because the impacts that we're assessing, in my opinion, are based on, well, I suppose we could assess the impacts based on the activity happening exclusively outdoors, but then that still wouldn't meet this criteria of events happening substantially in a building. And so it's a twofold issue, but the initial part is just generally, even if the building is built, where's the primary activity taking place? How much of this event is happening outside versus in the building once it's built? So
let's go back to the proposed conditions of approval. I think we could start there. The county has submitted a proposed condition of approval that no events take place until you have a occupancy certificate for your proposed structure. I summarized it, but that's essentially it, correct? So does the applicant have any objection to that proposed condition of approval?
No, I guess not, if that's what we need to do. I mean, the thought was just, once we are approved for the permit, the thought was maybe we can have a few weddings for money while we're trying to do this, but.
I understand why you'd want to do that for sure, but the county is looking at it from, well, an immediate thing to meet this condition. And the condition is that that the events operated, that the home occupation, the event hosting substantially is operated in buildings normally associated with EFU uses. So we've established kind of what it takes for your proposed accessory structure to meet that standard, but then that you operate it from, or at least substantially from, the structure that you erect. Now, I understand that you're also proposing to use your lawn and a tent. Can you describe your vision here of how these events will take place?
Well, again, the tent was only if we needed something prior so that we could make money doing these. And from what we've read, it has to be inside, so we would have to rent a tent. That was the thought. The lawn is just, we have to do a lawn over the top of septic. So there's going to be a lawn there. So we will be designing it so that it works and is aesthetic. But a lot of times lawns are used for this ceremony. So that was the only thought. Ceremony, pictures, maybe yard games. That's the only thought for the yard, because it has to be there. You have to have a lawn. So be able to use it with the views and all that.
Of course. And then since you have a kitchen and an event center inside, let's say, for example, you are catering, you're working with a caterer. Where does the food take place? Is that also outside or inside?
Well, that's all. I mean, the plan is to have that all inside. That's why the building is the size that it is.
Okay, and let's talk about music and dancing. Where does that take place?
Inside.
Inside. Okay,
Yeah.
so these are the kind of details that show substantial use of your structure.
Right.
Though that's kind of what I'm eliciting here. So your vision then, let me just restate it, is that you have your lawn available for maybe some unstructured or partially structured activities like games, that you have maybe chairs set up under a tent for a wedding ceremony or something similar, but that the reception takes place inside, the food is all inside, that music and dancing is restricted to the inside area. Is that essentially correct?
Yes.
And what I would consider would be, let's talk about a condition about no outside music. Outside music can really carry, and I'm sure that you're aware how that can really carry. And whereas where it's inside, that tends to be a buffer that keeps music from disturbing the neighbors. And I'm not talking about a wedding song playing as a bride marches down and the violin is going or what have you. I'm talking about the dancing.
Right.
And is that something you're agreeable to?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that's
So-
partly where we positioned it, where it's at, up next to the tree lot, again, for a buffer.
Okay. So I would say no outside amplified music or dancing. Now, and I'm not saying that that if you have your dance reception hall going and you have some people who are dancing in your carport or something to the music, that's prohibited. That's not my intention here. My intention is that the focus of it would be within that center. People go out on the lawn and dance to the music. That isn't a problem. It's really the amplified music that carries across to neighboring areas and makes a definite impact on the surrounding community. Okay, so I'll craft something like that. Does the county have a suggestion about this?
No, I think you hit everything right on the head, Carl. I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I think there was another section you wanted to raise as a yes.
Yes, we'll go back to my PowerPoint. So on my list was noise, but I think that we've resolved the noise issue by proposing a condition that would limit the dancing and the amplified music to the indoors. So I think that that's been resolved. I had already recommended a condition of approval that limits the amount of noise proposed to what the code allows for, which is 60 decibels, to not exceed 60 decibels or the ambient noise level after those certain hours. So
maybe I'll add a phrase here about the no amplified music outside, and that should help with that.
perfect. Let's see here. And the next one.
Well, let me
oh.
just, is the applicant okay with me amending that to add a phrase? I don't want you to be I want to discuss these things now rather than have you look at it and go, well, we're going to have to appeal this.
Yeah, no,
Because of that.
yeah, that goes with what we've kind of thought, so.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okie doke. So after noise, section 100 and geez, section 401.05. It talks about making sure that the proposed conditional use does not force a significant change in farm and forest practices or significantly increase the cost of farming practices. And the applicant had an interesting statement in their narrative, but I felt didn't provide enough information to fully demonstrate compliance with this criteria. So the applicant states that about a mile away from the property, there's another event center, and 5 miles away, there are a couple more event centers, and that didn't change the cost in farming practices that they've seen. But I didn't find that there was enough information to help substantiate that claim or for me to really understand what that meant or perhaps how long these events have been taking place for and really just any information to help support that statement. So,
well, let me be direct. Do you know what these venues are?
I was able to find one about a mile south, but the 2 5 miles away, I didn't get that information and I didn't find it. So,
okay. Does the applicant have a comment about this?
There's a wedding center at Wooden Shoe Tulip Farm and Postal Waits, Vandervert. There's several of them around. I guess my comment is I didn't know how to answer that. It has not changed and it won't change anything we're doing. It's not changing our berries. It's not, we still have as many berries that are going to be, you know, in the garden. We actually have room to expand. So I guess I don't know how to answer that. What is it you think it's going to change that we can answer?
well, and maybe I'll just ask a question because it sounds like you rent your farm out to a farmer. Is that
berries
correct?
are leased.
The berries are leased, and so I guess like, are you making the finding that the cost to grow the berries hasn't changed because you haven't charged more rent or you're not leasing the land for anymore, or has the farmer who is farming the berries not changed their cost of farming, or how are you determining that it hasn't cost you anymore if it's leased land?
To put on an event?
No, to continue your berry farm leasing. The operation of your berry farm.
So I guess what we were addressing is whether or not us adding an event center was going to change anything. And I guess I don't, how is that going to change anything? It hasn't changed. We haven't done anything yet, but we're not changing the size of the berries. They're still leasing it. It's not changing any of that. So I guess what change are we addressing?
And your neighbor suggested that there would be difficulty with him continuing his existing farm practices. He cited, it was vague, whether there might be more traffic on the road, I think implying that it might cause him difficulty getting his own equipment to the areas of his own farming operation in a timely manner. It also implied that it didn't specifically state, but it implied crop dusting. But I couldn't tell if it was truck equipment that he was using or an airplane, because he didn't say. It could be that he uses a truck to haul chemicals and sprays it. But that was it.
So the farm across the street that you're talking about and ours both are sprayed and worked with tractors. They're not on the road hardly ever, and neither are our farmers. And I guess it's everything continues as normal as far as our farm goes. So the farm stand garden continues. All the berries are still here. And yeah, and as far as the traffic on the road, the county has determined that an event, I think we're allowed to do about 30 events a year is like adding one house on the road for the period of time of 1 year. So I think we meet all the standards there. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Did you have any more questions about that, Ms. Lord?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you. And then last but not least was just addressing section 1021, which pertains to solid waste and recycling. There was just no description of where the trash is going and how we're getting it out of here and what that's going to look like. So I had recommended that a condition of approval be proposed to get that information so we know where the garbage is going.
There are requirements for, and you've seen them in many places, where you go to a place that has people coming to it, any kind of commercial venue. There'll be a screened area with the trash and recycling, and it's kept there. It has to be approved by the county. That's what that proposed conditions of approval has. Do you have any concern or issue or objection to a condition of approval requiring that you get your trash and recycling in an approved area like that?
No, to be honest, I thought I drew it in the plot plan. So I looked last night and it's not there. And I apologize.
But of course you need a place for that. And that's what makes sense. Okay, so let's move on.
That actually concludes my presentation. I've got my email address up here again if anyone listening needs to send any comments in, but that's all I prepared for you today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lord. And does the applicant have anything further to state in support of this application?
I don't believe so.
Yeah, I think covering all those issues that Melissa had brought up. Yeah.
You had an opportunity to review Ms. Lord's staff report?
I'm going to answer that with yes. I believe that we reviewed everything. Yeah.
And there were a list of conditions of approval that was attached to that?
Yep.
Okay. And do you know, and you agree with all of the proposed conditions of approval as I've kind of verbally amended and added to? Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. At this time, I'd like to open the hearing to members of the public who would like to provide a comment or raise support or opposition concerns. Use the raise hand feature if you want to participate in this hearing. We have anyone? Okay, none.
I don't see any hands raised.
All right, at this time, does any party or member of the audience want an opportunity to provide additional evidence, arguments, or testimony? Use the raise hand feature or state. Does the applicant wish to waive the period for final written argument? That's
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
I'm
Not
so
sure
sorry.
exactly what that
If
means,
we're
but
okay to do that.
we're good with
let's
whatever needs.
let's talk about this a little bit. It is a little tricky. So I'm obligated or required by law to make an opportunity available to all participants at the hearing and members of the general public to ask that the record stay open for a minimum of 7 days so that they can provide additional evidence and comments to the record. Now, no one has asked for that period. Given when I ask for that, when I make that opportunity, I'm also required to provide a 7-day rebuttal period. So there's a second 7-day period for anyone to submit additional information. And a third 7-day period for the applicant to have the last word, a final written argument. But if there is no one requesting to submit anything, it doesn't make sense to have a second week of rebuttal period, and you still have your last word period of 7 days, but you may waive that. If you want to keep a 7-day period to make a final, your own last word, you still have that right, but you don't have to.
I don't see that we need it. I mean, it seems like we're agreeing to everything, that you've stated.
Okay, then I've had an opportunity to review the file and have held the hearing and received all of the information here. I do believe that all of my questions were answered, that given the changes to the conditions of approval and the additional condition of approval that we agreed to here, that I suggested and you agreed to, I'm going to approve the application. I'll issue a written approval as soon as possible. I hope to get it out within the next couple of days. If I don't, I'm going on vacation. I apologize, but I don't apologize for having a vacation. I will get it done as soon as possible. Any questions about that timeline? Okay, then with that, I'll conclude the hearing and wish you all well. Thank you.
Thank you.
as well.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.